There is no doubt that worthiness is important in our ability to rise up. But what exactly is worthiness? And how can we learn how to overcome the myriad of beliefs we carry about ourselves and our possibilities? Thais Sky's Worthy Women Rise is a 4-month signature program for emerging leaders, seekers, and visionaries who want to learn the tangible tools to dismantle the worthiness wound and take up greater space as a self-expressed woman. Because this is our time. Go to thaissky.com/worthy to get on the wait list. Doors open January 22nd. Again, that's thaissky.com/worthy. This episode of Reclaim is brought to you by Goodnight Darling Co. To succeed, we're advised and encouraged to get up earlier, go to bed later, work harder, and sacrifice our sleep. You deserve better than that. Sleep is not a luxury, it's a norm. And here at Goodnight Darling Co., we're bringing sleep back. Use code RECLAIM for 15% off. Simply go to www.goodnightdarling.co. Reclaim is a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter, with your host, Thais Sky. Together, we will explore the questions of what does it look like to reclaim our sovereignty, our worthiness, our voices as women in this messy world. No topics are barred as we offer roundtable discussions on life, spirituality, politics, and what it means to be a woman in the modern age. Let's do this. Hello, everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast, where we have conversations that matter with your host, me, yours truly, Thais Sky. It's so good to be here on this brilliant Monday. It's Martin Luther King Day. I have some thoughts I want to share with you about Martin Luther King Day. But first, if you don't know this, I have been going on Facebook Live every single day since January 8th. So today has been day 8th of going on Facebook Live. I went on Facebook Live through the weekend, and I'm committed to this. I'm committed to this because I'm doing something called 21 Days of Worth, where for 21 days, I'm talking about worthiness. And I'm sharing some key understandings and principles that I've developed and come to understand about the worthiness wound and how it manifests and the ways that we can begin to reclaim our self-expression and take up greater space in the world. It's been quite brilliant to go on Facebook Live every day. Here's the thing about commitments. It really forces you to look at the ways that you're not showing up for yourself. You know, there's nothing like committing to something for you to run up against every excuse in the book for why you shouldn't do it. And when it comes to stuff like being visible and putting yourself out there, it's very easy to get attached to the results of that visibility, right? We put ourselves out there, yes, because we want to be on video, yes, because we want to practice, yes, because we have a message, but also because we want to be heard. And so when, we're not maybe getting the audience that we want or the results that we want in any capacity, it can feel very frustrating. And if that's you right now, if you're doing some bold, incredible things and you feel like you're not quite getting the results that you want, I just want to remind you that you don't know who's listening and watching. You don't know who is paying attention. Just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean things aren't happening. So really ground yourself into what you're doing, not the results of that work. Focus on planting the seeds. Focus on harvesting your work and trust that the people who are meant to see it, the people who it's meant to land with, the people who it's meant to change, it will change their lives or whatever. This is something that I've been keeping in my mind almost every single day since I started my business, because as entrepreneurs, of course, we are here to make a difference. And making a difference means that people have to be caring and listening, right? We can't make a difference in a vacuum. And so, of course, it's very easy to get attached to the results of our labor. And of course, then it's easy to fall into compare-itis because everyone else seems to be making the greatest impact and we're not, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to remind you that your work is important. Okay? Your work is important. Do not let your worth be tied to the results of your labor, because that is a fruitless task, my friend. If you let yourself need to be validated by other people in order for you to feel good about the work you're doing in the world, you are going to starve. You're going to starve yourself of the necessary nutrients of your own worthiness. It is not worth it. It's not worth it. Well, actually, this ties in pretty neatly with the conversation that you're about to listen in on as I interview Ericka Hart and we dive into performative justice. And it's really, why are you doing what you're doing? Is it to get validation, accolades? Is it to look like you're on the right side of history? Is it to look like you're woke or you're an ally or whatever? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you go on Facebook Lives? Or why are you running your business? Or why do you show up every day at the work that you're showing up in? Like, why? Is that enough? And I know that human psychology has us believing that something outside of ourselves is going to give us permission to be happy and to be fulfilled and to be enough. But let me tell you what, if you're basing your worth on other people's approval of you, you're going to be riding a really painful roller coaster. And I'm not saying this out of judgment. I'm saying this because I know, because I do it, because we all do it. And what I see to be true in the social justice conversation, what I see to be true in the entrepreneurial conversation is that the more you do something because you hope that it will get the approval and likes of others, the more you are going to entrench yourself in the painful reality that is your own addiction to that validation. Likes is addicting. Getting likes on Facebook, it's addicting shit. And it's not going to really drive you in the long run. It may drive you in the short run, but having your boss say that you're doing a good job, it feels good. But if that's the only reason why you're doing what you're doing, it's something for you to really investigate. And if you're speaking up in social justice, but you're telling everyone like exactly how, and you're kind of hoping for some cookies and candies or cakes or whatever, that's also something for you to be checking in on. But don't take it from me. Take it from Ericka. Ericka knows. Just listen to Ericka. You may know Ericka for going topless at Afropunk. You may know Ericka from Elle, Cosmopolitan, NBC News, Essence. You may know Ericka because of their work in sexual education. Ericka's pretty brilliant and has a lot of thoughts on social justice and specifically performative justice. We're going to explore the Me Too movement and the Golden Globes. We're going to explore the Women's March. We're going to explore a lot of poignant topics. But before I bring Ericka on, I just want to talk a little bit about Martin Luther King. I actually shared a post on Facebook that I want to read to you all. I know. No one likes being read to. I get it. Actually, I love being read to. Well, actually, I love reading. But anyway, the point is, I want to read this out to you because it's really, really important. And this is something that I hope we can all sit with and let it resonate in our bones and then let it move us into action. So I wrote, "Dear white women, tomorrow, that is now today, or that is now yesterday, that is now whatever day of the week you're listening to this, the day we honor Martin Luther King Jr. And I know you will be tempted to quote his words of love and light. I know because that was me, carefully selecting his most inspiring sayings, believing truly that I was one of the good ones, wishing the world was just more peaceful, all the while sitting in the comforts of my life without ever questioning my own participation in a system that benefits the few on the backs of the marginalized. As liberal, spiritual, well-meaning, white and white-appearing women, our cruelty does not lie in blatant racist remarks or burning of crosses, but in the insidious ways we put our own needs above Black and brown women. It lies in the ways we aren't willing to have the harder conversations because it gets us feeling all sorts of feelings like shame and guilt. It lies in the ways we advocate for love and light without being able to stand the healing, necessary heat of anger and fire. So while we would never consider ourselves racists, we are racists. It's burned into our flesh, unchosen but always visible, granting us access that is deserving to all but available to few. Luckily, as conscious women, we get to wake up and do something about it. The choice is there in every moment. Ignorance, denial, fragility, or love. So on Martin Luther King Day, let us not forget what Martin Luther King stood for. First and foremost, for justice. And justice requires a fierce dedication to dismantling our internalized whiteness, to speaking up against injustice, and to choosing sisterhood over privilege. This is the alchemizing art that is real love and light. We have a lot of work to do. To end, I share the words of Martin Luther King himself. He said, "First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with the methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." This is in Letter from a Birmingham Jail in 1963. Martin Luther King, thank you for your work. Thank you for your presence. And let us never forget what you lived and died for. May we remember that justice is the true manifestation of love. And that is why I am so thrilled to have Ericka on today. Ericka is going to be talking a lot about performative justice. And Ericka is going to throw some words around that you may not be familiar with. That's okay. That is the power of Google. If you do not know something that we are talking about, please Google it. Please educate yourself. Please get with the program. This is important. People's lives are at stake. So, while you're listening to this conversation, I want you to be thinking for yourself. Well, not maybe thinking for yourself, but for all of us. I want you to be thinking, what does your work of justice look like? Why do you do the work of justice? In what ways does justice manifest in your life? How are you actively dismantling the unjust systems that we live in? Are you doing it just to get a pat on the back? Or are you doing it for true liberation? Hi, Ericka. Welcome to Reclaim.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, what an honor to have you. I absolutely positively love your energy. I met you at Cycles and Sex, and your message, your heart, your work is so important in the world. And I would love to start there. I would love to start by talking about the work that you do, because that carries so much weight in the world. And I would love for you to just start by telling our listeners a little bit about what you do and how you do it.
Sure. So I am a Black queer femme, and I am a sexuality educator, an activist, and a writer. And a lot of where a lot of my, I could say like a lot of how people pay attention to me is through my sexuality education work, but it's also, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I went topless at a very prominent music festival 2 years ago now. And that is what had my pictures go viral. And then from there, I took that platform to really speak about the things that are important to me. So talking about dismantling white supremacy, talking about, not being ableist, talking about white feminism. It's really across the board, because my body is really just there for people to pay attention. It's also to center Black bodies inside of a breast cancer narrative where we don't exist, but that you can extrapolate that because the conversation is so much larger than just breast cancer. It's not just that Black folks aren't represented in breast cancer advocacy. They're not represented across the board, across many industries, across many campaigns. So yeah, I just take that time and that platform to really speak about the things that are important to me. And that's the work that I do.
It's so powerful that you well, a lot of things that you do is powerful, but the way that you've centered your body, your physical body in this work speaks so powerfully. I know that our bodies have been sexualized and contorted in so many ways through so many centuries. And that's just we as in, quote unquote women. And then once we get more nuanced and we go into specific race and gender identity, it just gets so complex. And I'm curious how that journey was for you of stepping into that unapologeticness, ownership of your body.
I think there's been, just being Black and living in the United States, in my experience, you have to constantly be defending your autonomy and defending your space, your body, with people. So I think that there is a natural build in your unapologeticness, as you say, amongst people, because you kind of, it's like a cross between unapologeticness and tired, is what I say, is that I took my top off, not just because I wanted people to see me as a sexual being, but I also was just tired of not seeing myself. Like, how is it that I can't even see myself in breast cancer advocacy? Like, I spent my whole life not seeing myself in my neighborhoods, not seeing myself in my schools and across the board, whether it be elementary, middle, high school, my universities. There's very few of us. I went looking for us in books and movies. And then here's this illness that impacts so many people, but we still are not making it about everybody that it impacts. We're making it about one particular person.
Pink, right? That's all I think of is pink.
Well, pink, and also white cisgender women who are middle class.
Yep.
Have a family of 3 and are very sad of how their families are going to deal with the fact that they have breast cancer, which is very real. But at the same time, that's not everybody's experience with breast cancer. And there becomes a whole erasure of people who experience breast cancer who are single, Black, queer, and broke, or trans, and are denied access to medical care because the doctor can't deal with the fact that they're trans. Yeah. So, I think that's where it came from. I think my unapologetic tiredness comes just from me being Black.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And I want to dive into this tiredness because before we recorded, you spoke about also being tired around a lot of people doing performative social justice. And I would love for you to expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So last night there was the Golden Globes, and the Golden Globes did a blackout, is what people are calling it, in support of the hashtag and the fund that's called Time's Up, which centered people that work in industries, service industries that are oftentimes forgotten. So janitors, housekeepers, so on and so forth, who are also at insurmountable impacts of being sexually assaulted. Many, many, many rich people donated to a fund. I think the fund is at 14 million, maybe $1 billion. And people showed up in Black. And then my timeline was full of, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Golden Globes, Time's Up. Like, you look so amazing wearing Black. And I just was looking at that like, wait a minute, I'm really perplexed why this is something that we think is going to make a difference or even causes a conversation beyond this person is wearing Black and that person is wearing Black. And there was a person that I follow, Guerrilla Feminist, who said, most cisgender men at these major award ceremonies wear Black tuxes. So what is actually the big deal, And I just think, it's not kind of like with breast cancer, it's pink, like you said, right? And it's like in October, it's like you see pink nonstop from football fields all the way to a pharmacy. It's just be pink, 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 everything. You can't buy a pair of socks in October without them being considered to be pink, and some support of a major breast cancer fund. And one I've always questioned, and many other breast cancer patients have questioned, survivors as well, where does that money go? Yeah. And what difference does the color pink do to someone that is, going through chemotherapy? Yeah. Like what, and also pink is a very you think of pink and they identify with, femme color, or like this is a very woman color and women are strong, but breast cancer impacts so many genders. And just like sexual violence, I mean, people talked about the color black and how black is being deemed as like a problem, even in this protest, right? It may seem simple, but these like very underlining messages also impact people and how they relate to things. But it's, it's famous people showing up in a color, and then that means that they did something. Yes. Right? They donated money, and that means that they did something. Right? How is that any different than an entire football team wearing pink socks and pink, shoulder pads and donating X amount of money to Susan G. Komen? Yeah. It doesn't really make a difference at all in the large scheme of things. And then I kept watching, and I'm listening to the folks on the red carpet and what they're saying, and they don't even know why they're wearing black. And I'm not a famous person by any means, but I get, you have a level of distance from what's actually happening in the world when your schedule is that busy. Yeah. So your stylist and your PR person is the person that's like, you need to wear black and let me brief you about it on your way to the Golden Globes. It's not that they're invested actually in this cause, because then the people that show up are lots of white cisgender people who are sort of talking about this issue, but not from an intersectional lens. And sexual violence does not impact people in the same ways. It's very different if you are a Black transgender woman who's been sexually assaulted than if you are a white woman who's been assaulted. It looks very different, and no one is having that conversation. And it's also very like, we're gonna protect women and girls. We're gonna protect women and girls. And sexual assault happens to any gender. Sexual assault is caused by many genders. And it's just not, it's a very, I was really upset because I was like, is that all it takes? Like, is that really all it takes, is just to wear a color? Like, wear a color and donate to something.
Well, I feel like it allows people a cop-out. So they don't actually have to participate or even have the conversation. Anything. Right. It's just like wearing pink at the Women's March. You just put on this pussy hat and now you're on the right side of history. You're a feminist. You're for women's rights. But then that's it. Then you're off the hook. You don't have to engage in the day by day work of checking your shit and understanding and having these conversations.
Mm-hmm. And there was an actor who won an award for being a rapist and said nothing about sexual violence.
Yeah. Jesus.
And it's like, no one said anything to him either.
Yeah.
And Natalie Portman is praised for saying, and here are all the men, nominees. Who cares? You know that they're all men nominees year after year after year. Stop going to the awards. And don't get me started on the activist accessories that were brought to the Golden Globes. Like, Tarana Burke is the founding mother, if you will, of the Me Too movement. And she was brought by Michelle Williams for what? Why didn't Tarana Burke introduce Oprah? Why didn't Oprah talk about Tarana Burke? Again, it's like this slight. It's very weird of the people who are actually on the ground. They have to go and be, carried with these. And it looks horrible. Like, if you look at those pictures all side by side, it literally just looks like slavery. That's how it looks to me. Like, if you Google Black women taking care of white women during slavery, it literally looks like the exact same. Yeah. Michelle Williams holding hands with Tarana Burke. Meryl Streep kissing an Asian activist on the head. Like, what? Like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. I was watching Jerry Seinfeld's comedy Cars situation, and he had on Trevor Noah. And Trevor Noah was talking about how the day of protesting has changed. And now people feel like they just tweet and they feel like they're protesting. Where the origins of protesting has always been to put your life on the line.
That's right.
And I'm curious, what do we do about this growing? Because there's definitely a power of social media. It gets the message out there. But how do we get people to continue to put their lives on the line, to go out there, to take a stand, to do something scary and courageous and meaningful?
I don't know. They have to have something at stake for them.
Yeah.
There's nothing at stake. All it is like what it seems like if you spoke about the Women's March. It's like, oh, Trump is in office. But most of the people who marched in the Women's March are white women who put Trump in office. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. I think there has to be something at stake for someone to the point where they want to put their life on the line.
Yeah.
Where they actually see how it's going to impact their life. That's the only way you're going to put your life on the line for a cause or actually stand up. But the thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with social media. I think social media is a great avenue to share, your views on a particular stance, but actually talk about something. Like, don't just fall in line with what everybody else is talking about. If everybody else is thinking that the Golden Globes is great, which is happening, it probably wasn't great. If that's the general census, if people are like, oh, yeah, the Golden Globes was powerful, Oprah's speech was super powerful, it probably wasn't. You get what I mean? It's like most people aren't going to like what you have to say. And you have to deal with the fact that people aren't going to like what you have to say. Like there's people literally on my Facebook right now who are arguing with me about how great Oprah is. Arguing with me.
Yeah.
They probably are not. And I say that with ease because I know that, like racists are like, oh, but people don't like what I have to say. That's not the point. I'm not saying that. Does not go to that extreme. But it's like, where's the analysis of what's happening? There has to be analysis. And people are like, oh, but something good is happening. That's bullshit. Because if people are not being held to account, then how in God's name, as Oprah said last night, there's a new future on the horizon for girls. How would there be a new future on the horizon if people are not being held to account for what they do? How? If I come forward about my sexual assault and that abuser is still walking around free, but I came forward about it, yes, it doesn't live in my body anymore, but nothing happens to that person, what's the point? What the hell is the point?
So let's dive even deeper into this idea of performative social justice, because I think there's, for many people, a clear line, and for many people, a not so clear line. And I would love for you to just break it down and define in your work. So since you are right there seeing this and doing this every day, what would you consider performative social justice to be?
I would say performative social justice is when you are doing activist work because you want people to see you doing activist work. You're not doing activist work because you know that you're about to push the bar and really push something over. You're going to tilt something. You want to be seen. And that's what it was. I'm going to wear black. It's just like the safety pin. Remember the safety pin thing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to wear a safety pin so you can see that I'm an ally. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wear the safety pin so you can see that. It's all performative. I'm trying to think of another example. But you can even say that like stickers and pins are performative. I don't think that there's a problem with those things. I think it's fine if you got a Black Lives Matter pin, like sticker on your computer. But how are you, showing folks that Black Lives Matter on a regular basis? Like, how are you, in what ways are you doing that work? And you don't need to tell me. Oftentimes people want to tell me what they're doing. And that's more performative justice. I don't make a long list of what I do in the world. I just talk about shit and I call it out and I hold people accountable and I say the things that terrify me, but I don't want a cookie for any of that. I want Black liberation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. I want people to get free. At the end of the day, I don't care if you like, oh, Eric, I want you to give me credit. That's a different conversation. I want you to be like, oh, I heard this from Ericka. But I don't want you to be like, oh, what Ericka is doing is so fantastic. What is fantastic about it? What does it move you to do? I want my work to move you to do something. I don't want you to see what I'm doing and get accolades for it. And that's what's happening. People are getting accolades for doing something. No, I want you to be inspired by what I do. So you do something.
Right.
That forwards what's happening. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If you're a doctor and you see that I'm topless because Black people are not represented, I really hope that you put some Black pictures up in your office. Don't just send me a message like it's really great what you're doing. No.
Yeah.
Oh, I did something. I told her she's great.
Yeah. So I have absolutely no doubt that you navigate a shit ton of fragility on any given moment.
Lord, child. You don't even know.
So I'm so I'm curious, how do you continue to stand in your message and communicate what needs to be communicated and do your work while not getting so completely not inundated, what's the word? Like overwhelmed and frustrated and angry and mad, which you're allowed to be, but like not let it like take you over. Or maybe you do, and maybe that fuels you. I'm just curious what that looks like for you.
I am angry.
Yeah.
And that does fuel me.
Yeah.
But there has to be a moment where I take care of myself. So there's acupuncture, there's yoga. My partner just told me to go to yoga. So Ebony is a huge part of my life that really just has me calm all the way the fuck down, even though Ebony gets me just as excited about these things as well. And we go back and forth about it.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, yeah, like I use that. I use that anger to say something, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like something as small as my self-care is a radical act as a Black femme.
Yeah.
Because I keep going back to the Golden Globes, but I'll use it again. Right now, Oprah did the speech, right?
Mm.
And now what that people are saying, oh, she should be president. And that's really in line with how we relate to Black femmes. We relate to them like, do labor, do labor, do labor. It's never sufficient. Oprah is a billionaire. That wasn't even sufficient. Now she needs to be president. It's like you need to keep doing things or it's not enough. You get that? You get what I'm saying? It's there's not, and this pressure doesn't just exist inside of Black femmes. It exists outside of us. So that's something that I absolutely deal with, is that I feel like I'm not doing enough. That so much so as I'm watching MasterChef Juniors, which I fucking love, I feel like I also need to be doing work as well. Like there isn't really a break. So for me, there has to be a break where I'm like not doing work, where I'm taking care of myself, where I shut off, where I go to yoga and I'm not thinking about the work that I have to do. I'm thinking about whatever mantra I'm meditating on. So yeah, like there has to be that time, that balance of taking care of myself. That's how I don't implode.
Yeah.
And if I do implode, then I come back.
Yeah.
There's something bigger than me that's moving me.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with me.
I just feel, your presence. I saw pictures of you in the music festival, and then like, the way that you are taking a stand is something that scares a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so it says something to the world when you can continue to be like, I don't give a shit if it scares people. I'm going to keep doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, Ericka, have you always considered yourself an activist? Is this something that's been a part of your life for, since you were little, or is this something that you stepped into as you got older?
I don't know. Titles are weird. Even most recently when I started getting a lot of like media attention, you have to kind of call yourself something so you can explain yourself to media outlets or and working as a freelancer, I also have to describe myself. So I guess, I mean, I'm currently writing my book proposal. And I feel like I've always been very outspoken. Like I talk a lot. So I just always had a lot of questions. And I think activists ask a lot of questions. I think that's literally their job, is to ask questions. Not necessarily to get an answer, but to cause other people to ask questions as well, and to question the world. So I guess you could say I've been an activist for a long time. It's not unfamiliar for me. When I went topless at Afropunk, that wasn't my first direct action. I've done work with this organization called Black Youth Project 100, they are not affiliated with Black Lives Matter, but they operate relatively similarly. And in college, I did a lot of work with union workers and a lot of protesting there. And I feel like as a sexuality educator, that's activist work anyway. And I've been doing that for about 10 years, because the ways in which people push up against you not doing sexuality education, you are absolutely positively an activist. The ways in which you push up against people and their ideological views about how sex should be taught and who it should be taught to and where it should be talked about and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so let's switch gears a little bit and dive into sexual education. I would love to know, how that came up for you. How did that begin for you, the journey of stepping into sexual educator?
Well, again, I was a talker, and in middle school, my teacher was like, we're only going to talk about abstinence. And then me and my very naturally talkative self, I said, why? And she was like, because that's just how it is. Like, you're not going to talk about sex until you get married. And I was like, well, don't you think we need to talk about those things now? Don't you think that's important that we understand, these concepts? And she really shut me down very quickly on why we need to just be abstinent. And that wasn't enough for me. So I went back to my family and started asking them why, and they tried to explain it to the best of their ability. But from there, I just was like, my friends started having sex in middle school. And I became like their little mini sex educator via, an AOL dial-up where I would research the answers to their questions. So yeah, I've always wanted to talk about what other people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
That's always been very interesting to me, and sex continues to be at the top of that list.
So what's the question that you get the most, or the challenge that most people come to you asking when it comes to their sexual understanding?
The question I get the most, a lot of my work is around gender. So I guess questions that I get the most is, what is cisgender? What is transgender? I do a lot of talks on the institution of gender. So those kind of questions I get a lot because people know that I talk about that a lot. I guess other things that I would get is about sexual identity. It's like, am I a lesbian if kind of questions.
Yeah.
What is queer? What do these things mean? Because people, I operate inside of a very Black queer bubble, but most of the world does not. So it's very heteronormative. So, when I teach, it's not heteronormative. So people get, bombarded with images that they've never really seen before. So oftentimes I get a lot of these questions over and over again, like, wait, what? Like, you keep saying cisgender. What does that mean? Or you keep addressing us with gender neutral pronouns. Like, what does that look like? And so those are generally the questions that I get.
Yeah. I feel like it's really powerful that you are engaging in this conversation from the lens in which you are talking about it with, because it's still mind-blowing that this isn't common knowledge, that people don't know what cisgender means, that people, not only not talk about sex, but they don't talk about sex in this way. And I think, the more that we engage in these conversations, the more we get to recognize how different people are, and recognizing those differences can be a make or break for people's, well-being and level of deservability. Yeah, I love
For
that
sure.
so much. Yeah. And when I saw you speak at Cycles and Sex, what I loved about your talk was how approachable and relatable it was. You were able to engage the audience and talk about this stuff in a way that didn't shut people out, that kept people hooked. And I feel like that takes a real talent.
Yeah, I think it's an experience with honestly with public speaking, but also an experience with speaking to predominantly white folks.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I think that as a black femme, like you, or just as a black person, there is a particular way that white people want to be spoken to and will relate to you if you don't speak to them in that way. And that's not just white people as a whole, how they relate to folks. So it's like there's a way that I speak that I have to make sure that it's accessible or it's received. And sometimes it's still not. What you say, what you got may not be the experience of other people.
Right.
Because just by virtue of me delivering information that contests with their understanding of the world, oftentimes is met with, I don't believe that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or like what you're saying isn't true, which is ridiculous because oftentimes those people that say that have never studied gender.
Yeah.
They're basing that off of some I don't know, knowledge that they got from elementary school or something, but they're contesting with me because that's how they've been trained.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that whitewashing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having to make sure that every part of ourselves is presentable to our white, cis, heteronormative, patriarchal society.
Mm-hmm. Or you won't work.
Right. But that's interesting because let's loop back around to the Golden Globes where we first started. I feel like the Golden Globes and the type of I want to use the word activism, but it's not really activism, but the way in which they dressed and the way in which Oprah spoke in many ways can get to people that aren't into, that don't understand social justice, that may not have received her message if it had been harder hitting. And that's what I find to be difficult in my work, which is how do you, on the one hand, be true to what you believe and speak to that unapologetically, and at the same time, make sure that your message is able to be heard?
Well, it's a question that I always ask is who is this for?
Right.
Who is Oprah's speech for? Is it for white fragility? Or is it for the victims of sexual assault? Yeah. When I spoke at the Women's March, I was terrified because I was literally speaking against the Women's March. Yeah. And I didn't care who was necessarily was going to receive it as hard hitting. I wanted people to listen and hear that Black women, Black femmes, Black trans women have to be centered in this conversation, or this conversation is just white supremacy.
Yeah.
That's who it was for. It was for the most marginalized. So if you speak from who it's for, it will land. The people who it's not for will either get upset or be like, yep.
Yeah.
But you have to listen for who it's for. You know what I mean? That's you have to get really clear of who you're doing that for. And in Oprah's speech yesterday, she did a lot of thanking of the press. And I mean, yes, nod to her past. But it's also I get who this is for. It's not for anybody else but you, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
I hear that. I feel like, it's such a hard thing. Like the Women's March is coming back up again. And,
oh, it is? I didn't know.
Yes, January 20th.
Oh, dear God. I did not know we were doing this again. Dear God. Oh, gosh. Oh, man.
Yeah. No, it's happening again. And, the last Women's March was the largest march that was as seen in U.S. history. And that's really cool. And it's also so inherently problematic. Do you think that there's anything that can be saved about this whole thing? Or does it need to be just completely annihilated and start over?
What is the point? What is the point?
I'll tell you the point, Ericka. It's to wear my pink pussy hat, okay? And to put a really funny thing on a board and to appear cool. Okay, I don't understand.
If that's the point, then no, I think you could do more work just sitting from your computer and having a major Twitter chat. Like, I don't think that moves anything. And that's not to say that marches don't, they do. Yeah. But marches interrupt. You know, when people come together, like, they're getting arrested.
Yes. And that's, okay, I want to pause and I want you to highlight that, because I feel like that's what a lot of people didn't really understand or get about the Women's March. There was a lot of statements after the Women's March about how quote unquote peaceful it was. And what a great thing it was. And there was pictures of people with cops and being like, see, they are the good guys, right? Like, yeah, like we can have a peaceful march, right? Like trying to make some sort of moral statement about their march versus any other march. And that's so inherently problematic for many reasons. One of which is being because you didn't actually have anything on the line. You actually weren't taking a stand for anything. And the fact that white women feel protected by the cops is a part of the problem. Exactly. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit on that.
Well, that whole statement is anti-Black.
Right.
Because the people who have been in the streets marching for most of the history of America have been Black people. And the same people who get arrested are Black people in those marches. So that statement is just literally based in anti-Blackness. No one, if you're getting permits and you're figuring all these things out and you're getting them easily, first of all, getting a permit to assemble is not easy, right? And then taking up streets, major streets, because you are going to make noise about the violence that has happened to Black bodies, right? Then you're getting arrested for it. Like, what's peaceful about a Black body being murdered?
Yeah.
And there not being any sort of justice for the murderer. What needs to be peaceful about that?
Right.
White women convening that's what I would love to see. If, you know, Black people coming together, right, to stand in protest against, you know, murders by the police or any sort of atrocity that happens to our bodies in this country, because there's a plethora, it's not just police. White women standing, not on the front lines, but wherever those activist leaders say they need to be, such that those activists doing that work don't get arrested, don't go to jail. White women go to jail.
Right.
But 9 times out of 10, they won't. They won't go to jail. They won't get in trouble. You even see that with sexual assault. When Black people literally report sexual assault, the person that goes to jail is the person that reported it. You see that if you read anything by Kimberly Crenshaw, that they are also sent to jail because our bodies have literally been deemed as violent across the board. Yeah. So anyone saying like, oh, the Women's March is so peaceful and it went so well, that's just being anti-Black. That's it. It's just literally a direct, like, fuck you to any Black person that's ever marched. And it's disgusting. Yeah. It's just completely disgusting. Yeah. Because, like, it was peaceful, but then what happened?
So safe to assume I won't be seeing you with a pink pussy hat. I'm sorry. I find that to be so funny.
My pussy is not pink. Like, God damn it. Like, Jesus Christ. A sexuality educator knows, you know, like, not all pussies are pink. Not all pussies have value. And even in your quest for birth control and abortion, that was on the backs of Black women. So don't even try it. Yeah. Don't try it. If people want to talk, they want to center Black and trans femmes this year, like completely and 100% center, then okay, I would like to see that march. But they won't. They won't. Literally, white people in this country have been told their entire lives that they are center. Why would they do that in a march? Yeah. With millions of people. That's why they're doing a march. Again. Even after all the backlash, I wasn't the only person that was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love, as a final thought, to hear from you, you know, because my listeners are predominantly white, you know.
Hey, y'all.
What would you personally, as Ericka Hart, love to see? Like, what is your vision? What are you working towards? What would you love to see and hear more often from white people?
To decenter yourself, to center Black and brown voices, to put your money where your mouth is, to put your resources where your mouth is. Not to say, oh, I didn't know about this, or I'll read this book, or I'll read that book. Not going to your Black friends and asking for labor, but actually putting your money, not just giving to activists, giving to grassroots organizations, and not telling anybody you did it. Listening and affirming. That's what I would like to see more of. Listen and affirm people's experiences. Listen and affirm over and over again. What does that look like? So what that looks like is if I tell you that in the time that I have been dealing with breast cancer since 2014, I have experienced racism inside of the medical industry. How you affirm that is say, I really understand that that's happened to you, Ericka, completely valid. And you just keep listening. That's how that works. Right. It doesn't mean like, oh, what about women? Or, oh, what about this? Or, oh, what about that? Or, oh, but, I hear about this great organization doing that. It's none of that. It's literally like, I really get and hear your experience. I would love to see more of that. I think there would actually be a shift if people started doing that.
Yeah. I had a whole podcast episode talking about the difficulties in the ways that we have to relate to one another and how we've been indoctrinated with certain ways that we believe that we are exercising empathy, but are actually extremely violent. Like when someone says, I experienced this, our immediate reaction is to want to fix it or tell them what to do. Or the most often what I've seen and what I do again and again, and I have to keep biting my lip and pulling myself back and catching myself in the moment, is wanting to say, oh, that something like that happened to me too. Right? Like, oh, I can totally relate. Here's what happened to me. And that is so abusive, hurtful towards that person who's just trying to be seen and trying to be affirmed and trying to share their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Being human.
Yep.
It's a trip.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your vision. That's really powerful.
Thank you.
I keep wanting to use the word powerful with you. I think it's the energy in the air.
Not a problem. I was like screaming at the beginning of the podcast, so I get it.
No, no, it is potent is what it is. That is not screaming. That is power coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ericka, so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Is there anything else? Any final thing that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, that's it. Take care of yourselves. Self-care all the way. I'm going to go to yoga even though I don't feel like it at all.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. Oh, and I guess it would be awesome if people want to listen to my podcast with my boo called shameless plug called
yeah. Please do so.
Hood Rat to Head Rap. It is on SoundCloud and it is also on iTunes.
Awesome.
And then, people can follow me on Instagram, iHeartEricka, IHARTERICKA. And then my website is the same, iHeartEricka.com.
And all of the links will be in the show notes for people as well.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Ericka, for your fire and your power and your passion. I appreciate you. I cannot wait to continue to see your platform grow. You are someone that are doing really big work in the world.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for seeing me and inviting me to your podcast. Yeah. It's truly appreciated. Thank you for letting me go off and not interrupting or arguing with me about it. Thank you for affirming.
I'm just sitting here in awe, taking it all in. Ericka and I had a lot of thoughts around performative justice, and now we want to hear yours. Come hang out with us on Instagram. You can find Ericka at iHeartEricka. That's IHART Ericka. And me at I am Thais Sky. And if you want to check out more of Ericka's work, go to iHeartEricka.com. And as always, you can learn more about me and my work at ThaisSky.com. See you next week.